Mike Gundy, after being there for so long, has finally been fired from Oklahoma State. Also, Clemson, are they done with Dabo Swinney? And John Mateer, the Heisman favorite, now has a hand injury, is going to be out for the biggest portion of Oklahoma's schedule. We'll be breaking it down and much more. The episode, college football episode edition, starting right now. Welcome back to the Anthony Balester YouTube channel. I'm your host, Anthony Balester. We have a packed show. A lot of breaking news that was just getting released moments before we started the recording. But before we get into it, make sure you're following me across all social medias. We're at Twitter at Balester555. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Anthony Balester. Make sure if you're watching this, make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube channel. The more subscribers we have, the better the content can be and the more content we can bring you guys. Make sure that if you're watching this video, make sure to share it to anybody that you also know is a huge football fan. If you're a football fan, you probably got friends and family that are football fans. We do college football and NFL. This is the college football edition. Make sure you share it with them. Also, make sure to like this video. The more likes we have, the better it helps with the algorithm and the more content we can bring you guys. Well, let's get into what was the biggest news, and we said this before, and that was Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy, after being at Oklahoma for the better part of 2 decades, has been fired. Now, it came pretty early into the season. Most of the time, we like to see this happen mid to late season. But with the trend of, other coaches like Foster and Prey being fired from UCLA and Virginia Tech, it seems like teams or, college football teams aren't waiting much time. It seems like these universities are just moving on to try to start the process of figuring out who's going to be the coach of their future. So Mike Gundy is now out from Oklahoma State, and this is right off of the loss, the horrific loss they had to Tulsa. Tulsa is a Power 6 conference team, and they haven't even been that great at that level. They've been kind of like an average team at best at the, their Group of 6 level. They're not a Power 4 conference team. We know in college football, you got 6 conferences. You got the Big 4, and then you got the other 6. It's usually considered the Power 4, and then, the Group of 6. Being at Oklahoma State, yeah, they're one of the worst Power 4 conference teams, but they should be beating, average to below average Group of 6 teams. So they also are coming off of a complete dismantling from Oregon. Now, I know Oregon's one of the best teams. They have a high-powered offense, but you got blown out as if you were an FCS team. It was like 60-something to 3, completely getting destroyed off the football field. And then you have a chance to rebound. When you get blown out like that, you're going to get your team pumped up and ready. You're going to have something to prove. You're going to have a chip on your shoulder. And that chip was them losing to Tulsa. So I think at this point, it's beneficial for both parties. I think Oklahoma State needs a new voice in that, university. I think Mike Gundy needs to change the scenery. I think he does decide to maybe take a year off or two. Or if he does decide to continue coaching, I think we can see him at a Group of 6 level team. So I just think at this point, when you lose to Tulsa, after losing 66 or 69, 63, whatever it was, the 3 to Oregon, showing no level of heart, no level of chip on your shoulder. It seemed like he had lost the locker room at this point. Oklahoma State hasn't been a very talented team. So I know Mike Gundy last year, they struggled last year very, very bad as well. But this was a coach that didn't have much to work with. But at the end of the day, your team is still a Power 4 conference level team. And that's just not up to those standards. So Mike Gundy is out at Oklahoma State. It's unfortunate because when you think of Oklahoma State, you think of Mike Gundy. Well, not for any longer. So we shall see who they decide to bring in. But hey, now it's the 3rd Power 4 conference team that's going to be looking for a new coach. UCLA, Virginia Tech, and now Oklahoma State. Now let's get into some of the on-the-field games. We're going to start off with Oklahoma defeating Auburn 24-17. This was a battle all the way through. kind of a defensive style game. Both offenses at times were, getting stopped quite a bit and were stagnant. But John Mateer in Oklahoma was able to make plays when it mattered. I know at the end of the game, Auburn had a good drive, but then John Mateer followed that up and had a great drive as well, putting his team in a position to win the game, and then the defense finished it off. Before I get into this game, though, we got to talk about John Mateer. John Mateer has been one of the best players in all college football. I said that coming into the season because he was great last year at Washington State. Nobody knew about him, but I did. And I knew this guy was going to make a transition really easy going into the Power 4 conference and into the SEC, playing for a powerhouse with Oklahoma, who had so much pressure because they know they've been a good team, but they haven't lived up to expectations under Brent Venables. Now you bring in John Mateer. He was the missing piece, and their defense played so well. They won this game because of their defense. They had, I think it was 8 to 10 sacks, possibly 10, which is the most I think they may have ever had. Grayson Holt, Jaden Jackson, Devin Stone, Mason Thomas. These guys are all going to be first or second NFL draft picks, and you may get lucky to have one of these guys in their team. This team has about 4 or 5 of them. So this team is stacked throughout all levels of the defense. But the reason why I want to bring up John Mateer is because not only has he been one of the best players in college football and potentially the Heisman Trophy favorite and leader right now, he got hurt in this game. Breaking news right before we went live, John Mateer has a break in his hand. He's going to be out approximately a month. Now, they got to play against Kent State. They should be able to win that pretty easily. But then they got to go they got to play Texas. Then they got to play South Carolina. He should be back for the Ole Miss game, which is about a month from now. But still, the Texas and South Carolina game is going to be tough. Now, I know South Carolina at times has struggled on defense. So maybe with their good dual-threat quarterback in Hawkins, who I think is one of the best backup quarterbacks, and if it wasn't for John Mateer being so skilled, I think this guy would be a starter for a lot of other power conference universities. So they should be able to obviously get past Kent State. If the defense plays great, we know Lenore Sellers has talent, but he can struggle with consistency with his accuracy. They may be able to get past South Carolina. But I don't see how against the Texas Longhorns' great defense, unless if Arch Manning looks like how he did against Ohio State and absolutely can't, complete a pass or is absolutely, no confidence and absolutely a shell of himself, which I don't see that happening again. I think it's going to be really hard for them to beat Texas. And we said it coming into this season, Oklahoma was a 10 to 11 win caliber roster. But because of their schedule, they're probably going to end up being 8 or 9. And now you don't have your best player. It's really unfortunate for a team that seems to have been winning a lot of these games that were going to be tough on their schedule. But I can see it being Kent State. I can see it being South Carolina. I don't see him having a chance against Texas. And if he's not able to be back for Ole Miss, I don't see him having a chance against Ole Miss. So this is a devastating injury for a team and a quarterback that is trending upwards. Maybe one of the hottest teams in the country who has played against 2 good teams in Michigan and Auburn and have been able to finish and seal the deal in both. So my heart goes out. John Mateer is my favorite player in college football, so it's definitely unfortunate. I hope, maybe they only get the Texas loss, and then John Mateer can, steady the ship the rest of the way. Because we know if you have 2 losses, you should make the playoffs, especially in the SEC. So if they lose to Texas, they're still able to get 1 more loss with John Mateer. Now, if you lose to Texas and South Carolina, now you have no room for error, and you got to win out. And with John Mateer coming back from his injury, he may need a couple weeks to get ready. And if he's going to get thrust right in against Ole Miss, that's a tough ask. So that's definitely devastating news. And that's not just bad for Oklahoma. That's bad for all college football fans because we're losing out on one of the most exciting players in college football. Now let's talk about one of the other big matchups. We had Texas Tech, who was able to beat Utah. Now, this game was a lot closer than what the score indicated. Texas Tech kind of went off towards the fourth quarter. Will Hammond, their really star, talented backup quarterback, who is a redshirt freshman, came in for the injured Morton, and the offense looked a lot better with Will Hammond. This guy, looked really, really poised. The ball was just flying off his hand. He was making great accurate throws. He was reading defenses. And what really hurt Utah was the turnovers. Now, I know both teams had the turnovers, but Utah wasn't able to get nothing on offense. Devin Damper, who looked like one of the top dual threat quarterbacks so far this season, he was a shell of himself. He couldn't complete any throws. They held his running in check, multiple turnovers. So I think Texas Tech really showed how great they're going to be on defense. You know, you got these great pass rushers like Devin Bailey and Height. You got these great defensive tackles like Hunter and others. You got Jacob Rodriguez and these great linebackers. You got Pollock and these great secondary players. So Texas Tech showed that they got one of the best defenses. And what's crazy is the Big 12, who's always been known for these high-power offenses, is now becoming more of a defensive conference. We just saw this a couple weeks ago with Iowa and Iowa State and how defensive that game became. So I think they're flipping the script on the the stereotype that was the Big 12. The Big 12 can play defense now. And Texas Tech right now plays better defense than anybody. Utah's going to have to go back to the drawing board on offense. They don't seem to have the receivers. They don't really have depth at that position. So they got to get better at wide receiver. We know they have a good offensive line, but their quarterbacks got to get better as well. Their quarterbacks got to get more consistent in the passing game and not just be a runner. And their receivers got to make plays as well. But maybe it's not just that Utah was that bad. Maybe Texas Tech is that good. They paid a lot of money in NIL to get these transfers in for a reason. And with the players they already had, plus the transfers they bought in, we're seeing it all come to fruition now. Now let's talk about another game that was an absolute dismantling, and that was Indiana, who absolutely wiped the floor with Illinois 63-10. Fernando Mendoza has been one of the best players in college football this year, but it was against FCS teams or group of 6 teams, teams like that we wouldn't think, we're not going to take much, that's not going to warrant, us to talk about and brag about. You're playing against guys who are going to be utter occupation guys who aren't going to be going to the league. They're going to be relying on their degrees. Well, he finally goes against a great team in Illinois who's got NFL players all throughout the defense, not just NFL players, but high NFL draft players like Gabe Jacobs, Xavier Scott. These guys can be top 50 NFL draft picks, and they couldn't stop him. He made Illinois look like one of these FCS teams. This guy was throwing multiple touchdowns. I think he had 4 or 5 in this game. And when you look at the plays in the game tape, he was making tight window throws. I know Illinois could have did a lot better, but there's really not a defense that can stop a perfect pass the way Fernando Mendoza has. The guy's 6'5". He's not the most mobile guy, but he's mobile enough in the pocket, and he just goes through his progressions and plays the quarterback position so well. This guy has played so good, and now going up against this NFL talented type defense in Illinois, now that just makes everything else he did against the low level schools that much better. Now Fernando Mendoza has put himself in position to be in a top 3 Heisman candidate. And not only that, he's put himself and give himself just as good of an argument as anybody else to be the top quarterback in next year's draft. We know he was a sleeper heading into this year. He had no team in Cal. He had no offensive line. He was taking a beating and still was able to steady the ship and put that team in some good positions. Now you see what happens when he's got the talent around him, what he could do. So I love Fernando Mendoza. Yeah, in today's NFL, you like for him to be a little bit more mobile, but with that size, that arm, that's going to take him very, very far in his career. And if he can keep this up, he may end up being the top quarterback in the NFL draft. Now, one last game we want to talk about before we get the picks, and that was Syracuse, who upsets Clemson 34-21. The disastrous season and the woes for Clemson just continue. I really don't have an answer for this one. Cade Klubnik didn't play all that bad. Cade Klubnik had probably his best game so far this season. But, man, Syracuse came out with a great game plan. They went right down the field on Clemson's what was supposed to be a talented defense, made them look inept, went right down the field, got a touchdown, and then Fran Brown game planned for them to get an outside kick early on. They saw from the game tape in previous weeks that Clemson was always standing very far back from the kicks. Well, they took that into their advantage and got an outside kick that nobody saw coming. Then they went down the field and got some more points. So this was more to do about Clemson's defense and the game planning for Syracuse. It goes to show you how great of a coach Fran Brown is. Whenever this guy you doubt them. You don't expect much out of their team. They seem to over-deliver. He did it last year with Kyle McCord and the team that he had. They lost all those guys to the draft and transfer portal. Now you're expecting even less from them this year, and you look what they did. Yeah, maybe they struggled in the beginning of the game against UConn. Maybe they didn't look that good against Tennessee. But look what they did to Clemson, man. It goes to show you if this guy doesn't even have the talent, what he's able to accomplish. Now, it is unfortunate, though, the guy who's been the catalyst for Syracuse, the guy who's improved each and every week, their quarterback, Steve Angeli, is now going to be out. It looked like he was on crutches with a broken leg, and he's kind of been the heart and soul. Now, I know this team has a good defense, led by Demetrius Samuel, the 17-year-old corner who shut down anybody he goes up against. They're also got great receivers, but we know the quarterback was the heart and soul. He was the leader, and losing him, you saw when he went out, the offense was able to get one clutch touchdown, but other than that, they weren't able to really get much from their offense, so that should hurt them late in the season. But, man, for Clemson, what is the issue? Now, I know Dabo Swinney hasn't adjusted to the new era of college football. He hasn't been hitting the transfer portal. He hasn't been getting these big NIL deals from guys. But when we looked at this team coming into the season, no one sat there and talked about the transfer portals because they shouldn't have needed any transfer portals. When you look at the talent that this team has, look at all the draft picks that were in mock drafts with this team. Peter Woods was a top 3 pick. TJ Parker looked like a top 3 pick. Avian Terrell looked like a first-round pick. You got Sammy Brown, sophomore linebacker, who was one of the top recruits to come out. And he looks like he's supposed to be the top linebacker in next year's draft when he's eligible. Plus, you bring in the one big transfer that they did have, will help the pass rusher to go along with TJ Parker. And then when you look at the offense, you had one of the best returning quarterbacks in college football in Clay Klubnik. This was supposed to be an improved offensive line. You had all these receivers like Wesco Jr., Moore, Brown, and Antonio Williams, and the offense wasn't able to get anything done the first 3 games. Now, I know Antonio Williams was out. He's still not 100%. So that has really hurt. But one player shouldn't make up for the whole team when you got Clay Klubnik, Moore, Wesco Jr., and others. This team has had a lot of good players, but their offensive line has regressed. Their offensive line that was supposed to be improved but hasn't. And since Dabo Swinney hasn't brought in the transfer guys, the offensive line has no answer. And then the defense that didn't need any transfers, that was supposed to be the Kyle Sutter team, has really disappointed. I really don't know how a defense with this much talent could disappoint week in and week out. So there's a lot of questions here. I do think Dabo Swinney doesn't get fired with what he's accomplished and what he's done for Clemson. I think that would be premature to get rid of him. But, man, if this doesn't get fixed by next year, and we're sitting here talking about this next year, he may get fired as well. Now, this season's over. They're not going to be able to make the playoffs. We know that. They got 3 losses now. That already eliminates you to playoffs. Now you got 2 losses in the ACC that probably eliminates you from competing for the ACC championship. Even if they went out, you're looking at a 9-3 team who will have 2 conference losses as well in one of the weaker power conferences, I may add, in the ACC. So Clemson's season is over now. My preseason pick was a dud. It's unfortunate after getting Ohio State right, Michigan right, getting Georgia right 2 years before that. So it's unfortunate, but Clemson has really regressed. Their offense struggled the first couple of games. Now their defense is struggling as well. Next year, they're going to be a lot of pressure. Next year, Clemson, even if they do better than this, but still don't win the ACC or go deep in the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of questions. Now, the only way Dabo Swinney could unwrite this is by being what he was with Trevor Lawrence, being what he was with Deshaun Watson. And that has to happen next year, or Clemson's going to be done with Dabo Swinney because, yeah, he hasn't adapted. That's put this team at a huge, deficit, and has put them, back a few steps from other teams. But when you have the talent on defense and you have the talent on offense, you still got to expect better than losing to Georgia Tech, losing to Syracuse, struggling with Troy, and losing to LSU. So that recaps everything that happened in Week 4. Now we're going to get into some of our game picks and game previews for Week 5. So let's start off with the biggest matchup. My favorite team, Alabama, number 17 Alabama, is on the road in a tough matchup against number 5 Georgia. Georgia, rightfully so, was a 2.5-point favorite. Yeah, I think Georgia's going to win this game. Georgia and Kirby Smart has struggled with Alabama. They know that. They're going to be very upset. They're going to want to redeem themselves from what happened in last year. We said, Kirby Smart, who coached under Nick Saban, was it an Alabama issue that he has, or was it a Nick Saban issue? And then when you lose last year the way he did to Kalen DeBoer's Alabama, now the question is, well, maybe it's not Nick Saban. Maybe you just struggle with Alabama. Well, he's going to have every opportunity to rewrite that script. That game last year was exhilarating, probably the best game of the season. So I expect this game to be fireworks as well. We know Alabama is going to get some good players back. They're getting their defensive tackle back. Tim Keenan, the third, he's a huge valuable piece. He really stuffs the run, and that's something Alabama struggled with so far this year. They're going to get Jam Miller back, their star running back. Ty Simpson has looked great. He's got his confidence back. He's looked like one of the most accurate pocket pass quarterbacks in college football. Ryan Wonders finally had his breakout game, so we know what he's going to bring. But when you look at Georgia, I know that their defense did struggle against Tennessee. That gives them another reason to have the chip on their shoulder. I don't think, Alabama, with the talent that they have, I don't think that they're going to be as good as Tennessee. When you look at the depth Tennessee has at wide receiver, I know Alabama's got Ryan Williams. I know they got Jeremy Bernard, who's a tremendous receiver as well. But when you look at Tennessee with Matthews, with Chris Brassel, who's like 6'5" and super fast, I think Tennessee has a much deeper receiver core than them. Plus, I don't think Georgia is going to take Alabama as lightly as Tennessee. I think with Tennessee, they caught a lot of people off guard. When they lost Nico Imaliava and they had Joey Aguilar, I don't think no one expected Joey Aguilar to play as good. Well, Georgia's going to be upset about that. Their defense is going to have something to prove. And they're the home team. When they played Tennessee, they were on the road. Now they're flipping the script. They get the home field advantage. I think Gunner Stockton is going to have a huge game. We know Alabama can struggle with dual threat quarterbacks, and Gunner Stockton's a guy who can run a little bit. The guy, can do a little bit of both. And when we look at the receivers that Georgia has as well, with Zachariah Branch and others, they got good tight ends. They got a really good offensive line, a better offensive line than what they had last year. I think this sets up for a Georgia to win. I think it's going to be kind of low scoring. I know we mentioned all the good offensive players, but I think Alabama's defenses look much improved. Hubbard, Keon Saban, that secondary looks better. They get their D tackle back. I think Georgia's defense is going to have a chip on their shoulder from giving up all those points to Tennessee. So they're going to have something to prove. I think C.J. Allen on defense can have a big game. I think Georgia's secondary, who got absolutely destroyed against Tennessee, they're going to be much better. So I expect a low-scoring game in this one, but I think Georgia being the home team is the difference. So I'm going to go with Georgia to win and cover. In another huge matchup, we got Oregon going on the road to Penn State. Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite. This is a really tough game to pick. This is a game that I can see it go either way. I'm going to go with Penn State to win and cover. For one, they're the home team. They got one of the hardest and best whole field advantages. So it's really tough to go there and play. We know Dante Moore has been pretty flawless all year for Oregon. But now, he's going up against Penn State. It's a whole different rules when you're going up against Oklahoma State and you're going up against Northwestern, and now you play Penn State. Penn State has a tremendous defense. Dennis Sutton has really broke out this year. They got Durant as their defensive tackle, Harris at corner. This team, they got one of, if not the best linebacker core in college football as well. We know with their double running and back attack, they finally got some transfer receivers who are breaking out as well. And I think with Drew Aller being as experienced that he is, I just think that Drew Aller, I expect a bigger game out of him being the home team than I do out of Dante Moore. Dante Moore's got a lot of high potential. Obviously this is his second season as a starting quarterback, but first year at Oregon. But he's never played in a hostile environment like this. So I think Oregon, because of that, will struggle a little bit. Now we know Oregon has a really good defense as well. You got Uangale and those and Tatum and these other great edge rushers as well. So I expect this game to be a very defensive game. I expect both teams to get after a quarterback. I can see both these quarterbacks having turnovers, but I think late in the game, I'm going to trust the experience of Drew Aller right now over Dante Moore. So give me Penn State to win and cover. In another ranked versus ranked matchup, we got LSU going on the road to number 13 Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a really, really good receiving core with Wallace and Lee. They have a breakout running back in Lacey. We know Austin Simmons, their superb talented quarterback who has struggled with consistency and with turnovers when he's been out. And Trinidad Trilis, who's coming there, who comes from a D2 level school, he seems to be the better quarterback at this point. I know Simmons gives them more upside, but I feel like Trinidad gives them the safer floor. Now, LSU going on the road, I can see why Ole Miss is the 2.5-point favorite there, but I'm going to go with LSU. It feels like this has been LSU season. LSU, along with Miami and some others, it seems like everything's going their way. Garrett Nussmeier, one of the top returning quarterbacks, he looks like he's not making the same mistakes that he did last year. He's been more consistent. He's been taking big hits and still making good throws. And when he's not taking big hits, his offensive line is doing the best they can to hold him upright. All the transfers that this defense has brought in, they've all panned out. LSU's finally got a good defense that they've hadn't had probably in the Brian Kelly era. We know that they had the power offense. They really haven't had the defense of Brian Kelly. Now they do. Monster Delane has been one of the top shutdown corners in all college football. They got a lot of great depth there. They got DJ Pickett, who's a 6'4", 6'5" true freshman. When he's been out there, receivers haven't been able to get past him with his length and his talent that he has with the speed, the length, the size. He I know he's inexperienced, but he doesn't play like a true freshman. And then you got Whit Weeks, who he's been unbelievable as well. They also got some great players like Harold Perkins. So this is a team that's got great players at all levels. And then when you look at the offense, you got Garrett Nussmeier, but they go 4 receivers deep. They should have their tight end back. He should be closer to 100%. And Trey'Daz Green, he looks like the best tight end in college football. And then when you look at Ole Miss, they got a good defense as well, led by Perkins and some of these other great defensive linemen like Xavier Harris. So again, keeping with the trend, I expect a low-scoring game, but I'm going to go with the road team with Garrett Nussmeier, who I trust more than either quarterback of Ole Miss. And I just think everything's going LSU's way. I think LSU is a more talented team across all the positions and on offense and defense. So I'm going to go with LSU in the upset there. Now we got Ohio State going on the road as a 9.5-point favorite against the Washington Huskies. Now, this is a real tough test for Washington. We know their offense has been pretty explosive. Denzel Boston has been able to out-muscle receivers. He's 6'3", 6'4", can catch anything thrown his way. That's why he's being considered for the first round. Jahan Coleman, one of the best all-around running backs that can catch the ball at the backfield. He could run it short yardage as well. But I just don't see how Washington's defense is going to be able to stop Ohio State. They do got some talent there, but I just don't think you have enough talent to stop a Jeremiah Smith, who's the best receiver, if not the best player in college football, to stop Cardinal Tate, who's the best number 2 receiver in college football. And you can make an argument that Jeremiah Smith, who's the best receiver, some people are saying Cardinal Tate might be the best draft-eligible receiver. Jeremiah Smith being only a sophomore, he can't go to the draft this year. He's got to wait to 2027's NFL draft, where Cardinal Tate can come in this year. And him alongside Jordan Tyson from Arizona State, those have been the top 2 guys for the NFL draft. So you could potentially have the first or second best receiver in this year's draft, along with the guy who's going to be the best player probably in the draft after. So having that, with some of these running backs that this team has, Julian Sam has had his struggles at times, but when he's on and he's in rhythm, he's hitting these guys in stride. He's reading defenses. I really like his talent as a first-year starter. You got to expect some growing pains, but he's been able to do his best job to limit that. I know Dedmon Williams is another young quarterback who looks pretty good. He's been able to, with his dual-threat ability, he can run, maneuver in the pocket, hit the wide receivers on the run. So he's a great player as well. But them being the home team, yeah, that gives them a slight advantage. But again, Ohio State just got too much talent. And then when you look at the defense that they have, yeah, they lost a lot of players, but this defense looks just as good as it did last year. Some of these defensive linemen look really, really well with McDonald and Jackson. The secondary, led by Caleb Downs, the best defensive player in college football at safety. He's been unbelievable. He can play almost every position back there. You can line him up at nickel. You can line him up at corner. You can line him up at safety. It don't matter. He's just a chess piece. And then when you look at Styles, the linebacker, with Reese, those guys have been the two of the most explosive linebackers. They could go sideline to sideline, and I think that's going to give Washington some issues. So I'm going to go Ohio State to win and cover in that one. The next matchup we got number 21, USC, a 7.5-point favorite on the road to number 23, Illinois. Now, we know Illinois just got embarrassed on both sides. Luke Altmaier in the offense couldn't get anything done. Xavier Scott on the defense couldn't get anything done. I think that's going to make them play really, really hard in this game. They know they can't afford to go back-to-back losses. But on the flip side, USC, this looks like the Lincoln Riley team we expected from USC. Jaden Mavia has been much more improved. He's looking like the second coming of Caleb Williams. And then the receivers they have. I know Jacoby Lane's been out. But Malachi Lemon's been unbelievable. They got some other young receivers who have really, really stepped up in absence. And USC finally looks like they got a defense. Fitzgerald at safety's been really well. Lucas and Fountain as the two edge rushers have been really creating havoc for the quarterbacks. But going on the road, 7.5-point favorite's a lot to go on the road. USC definitely looks much improved. And Illinois does have their questions now. We know that if it wasn't for the turnovers in the first half, maybe the Duke game's a lot closer. And we know they didn't look that good against Indiana. So I'm going to pick Lincoln Riley to come up with a good game plan and for USC to win this game, but not to cover. I think Illinois is going to be very upset from what happened last week. We know when teams get blown out, they come back better than the next week. So I expect that. I can see this being a 3-point game. So I'm going to go USC to win, but no cover. Now we got another SEC matchup. We have a lot of them this week. We got Auburn trying to rebound from their loss to Oklahoma, going on the road to Texas A&M. Texas A&M right now was ranked 9th, and they're a 6.5-point favorite. I'm going to go Texas A&M to win, but no cover. I think Auburn has showed with the defense they have, with Cam Coleman, who could have lost anybody, Jackson Arnold, with the dual threat he has, he could run. He's made much improvements as a thrower this year, so I really like Jackson Arnold. And he's got so many receivers to his disposal. Plus, they got Cobb at running back, so I like their running backs as well. We know with Kendrick Falk as the edge rusher, the corners that they have, those guys can make an impact. But Texas A&M, they just have a lot of talent. They're one of the toughest places to play on the road as well. Marcel Reed, who was just a runner last year, now he's making plays in the passing game as well. Mario Craver's been a huge breakout receiver. He's looking like he's going to end up being a first-round NFL pick. His explosiveness, if you give Mario Craver the ball, he could take a 5-yard pass and turn into a 60-yard game. So I like him. They got some other receivers as well to help complement him, so they don't have to rely just singly on him. We know Texas A&M's got multiple good running backs. They got a very talented offensive line with 2 or 3 NFL players at that position. So I'm going to go Texas A&M, but because how tough Auburn's played, that the fact that they're coming off of a loss, I'm going to go Texas A&M, no cover. Again, another SEC matchup. We have number 15 Tennessee on the road as a 7.5-point favorite against the undefeated Mississippi State. We know Mississippi State has really shocked a lot of people. Everybody thought that they would be probably a 2 to 4 win team, and I think they're sitting here today 4-0, I believe. And they got a win over Arizona State. That was one of the biggest shocks. Their defense has played much better, but we expected them to have a solid defense, but it was their offense that's really surprising. Thompson has really emerged for them at wide receiver. We were wondering who's going to emerge at the wide receiver position. They got a speedy wide receiver that can take the top off the defense. I like their running back. Blake Shapen's an experienced quarterback, and that experience has really helped him in his favor. But I'm going to go Tennessee to win and cover. Tennessee just has way too much talent. We saw how close they almost beat Georgia. Joey Aguilar has been one of the top 10 quarterbacks in college football. We know Chris Brassel has been a tremendous receiver for them. They got some other receivers as well. They got some good running backs. And we know Tennessee's got a good defense. They should be getting their corners back soon, McCoy and Gibson. But other than that, you still got Joshua Josephs. We know they got some good defensive tackles. They got Aaron Carter, one of the most athletic linebackers. That's just going to be way too much. I know they're going on the road in the SEC. 7.5-point favorites a lot. But I just think that with how high Mississippi State's been flying and how Tennessee's still trying not to get their second win, I think that all comes here. I think it's time for Mississippi State to finally come back to earth a little bit. And I'm going to go Tennessee to win and cover. But let's not take away from the head coaching job that Jeff Lebby has done with Mississippi State. This is a team that didn't have much expectations, and this guy's getting the most out of his players, and that's what a coach should do. Now let's talk about a Big 12 matchup. We got number 24 TCU going on the road to the team that Mississippi State beat, who's still trying to rebound from that, in Arizona State. Arizona State is a 2.5-point favorite. They do got the home field advantage. I just haven't been really impressed with Arizona State, to be honest with you. I think Sam Leavitt has had his inconsistencies. He's a really good runner in the pocket. He can make throws on the run. But he's had his struggles with that. I like their breakout running backs, but I don't trust their offensive line. Their defense has some good pieces. I like some of their corners. I like some of their edge rushers. But as a whole, their defense can struggle. So they got some weaknesses on the defense. They got some weaknesses on the line. And Sam Leavitt has had his inconsistencies. When you look at TCU, they've been pretty much flawless. Josh Hoover has been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football. He's very experienced now in his second season as a starter. We know he was one of the leading passers last year in the Big 12, and he's just building on that. They lost some receivers to the NFL draft, but those guys who replaced them are playing just as good. Eric McAllister had over 200 yards last week. He looks better than probably the receivers that they had last year. You still got some other guys as well, like Jordan Dyer. We know TCU's got some breakout defensive players, and because of that, and because of how inconsistent Arizona State has looked, I think Arizona State's the better team, but they just haven't looked as consistent as we thought, where TCU has looked really well, and they've won a lot of games in multiple different ways. They completely destroyed North Carolina. They were able to win in a shootout against SMU. So until I see Arizona State show some more consistency, it looks like last year they caught everybody under the radar. Nobody saw them coming. Now nobody's looking at them as a surprise. Everybody knows when you're playing Arizona State, you're playing a team that nearly beat Texas and almost went to the semifinal in the playoffs last year, a team that won the conference, and I think they know that. I'm going to go with TCU to win in the upset. We got some Big 12 matchups to finish this up. We got our second last game to predict. We got Arizona on the road against Iowa State. Iowa State's a 6.5-point favorite. Arizona, who looked inept last year, looked like they were going to have to go into a complete rebuild. Typical of the way that their season ended, you thought all their players would enter the transfer portal, their coach would be on the hot seat. Well, they've really stirred the ship, turned everything around, and got their team going. They looked really, really impressive against Kansas State. Noah Fafita has looked like the Noah Fafita from 2 years ago. They got a really great running back who is breaking out this year. He's been one of the top most explosive running backs in the Big 12. But I got to go Iowa State to win and cover this. They're the home team. They're the much better team. Iowa State beat Iowa. They also beat Kansas State as well, like Arizona did. And Rocco Beck has been one of the top quarterbacks, not for this year, but for the last couple of years. You know what you're going to get out of him. He can run a little bit, but you know he's going to bring a consistent game. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's not going to put the team in harm's way or put this team behind the 8 ball. He's going to make good plays. He's going to make smart plays, get the ball out to his wide receivers. Now, this receiver core is not as dominant as it once was. They don't have the two great players like they did last year with Higgins and Knoll, but they got this committee approach to where you don't know which guy is going to get the ball. Now, that's got its cons, but it's also got its pros. You don't know which guy to game plan for. Plus, you got Henson. You got another good running back as well, so they go too deep at that position. They have a really experienced defense that I like a lot. So with McLaughlin, I love their secondary with Neal and Williams. So they got one of the best secondaries in the Big 12. I think they're going to cause Noah Fafita fits. And what they did to Iowa, I think that they could do the same to Arizona. So I'm going to go Iowa State to win and cover. Now to finish it out, we got number 25, BYU, a 6.5-point favorite on the road to Deion Sanders' Colorado. Now, Colorado looked better last week. I think they finally settled in on their quarterback, Galen Salter. Salter is their best option. Juju Lewis, 17, 18 years old, is not ready. Ryan Sabb is just not a good starting quarterback. But when we know that this team in Colorado has played against power conference level teams like Georgia Tech and others, they've really struggled. Salter can't seem to complete a pass. The only time he can seem to complete a pass is when he goes up against these low-tier schools. He's really mobile in the pocket. He's good at escaping the rush. He's good with making plays with his legs. But he's been really putting this team at a disservice and, behind the eight ball with his passing game. So I can't trust him at all. And BYU, they have a really good defense. I literally like how they looked the last couple of weeks. They have a freshman quarterback in Bear Buckmeyer who's worked really well. They got some wide receivers that's really, really helped him and his development. I know he's a young and experienced guy, but he's got receivers and playmakers to get the ball to, and he's been able to do that while not being able to turn the ball over as much. So the sad thing is, even though Colorado's have the more experienced quarterback, so far this year the freshman quarterback has been better for BYU, and BYU is just a better team. So I think Colorado has an improved defense. This is probably the best defense they've had in the Deion Sanders Colorado era. But BYU's defense is even better than that, and their offense is better as well. So I can't trust Colorado. I think that this is going to be a rebuild year until Juju Lewis is ready next year, and then this team can look like how they did with Shedeur Sanders. But until then, I'm not going to trust Colorado. I think that they'll beat up on a lot of these low-level school teams, but they're not going to be able to beat up on BYU. BYU is the type of team with their running backs and receivers, they're going to be able to beat up on them. So I'm going to go with BYU to win and cover. And that pretty much does it for this week. Make sure to follow us across all social medias. We're at Twitter at Balester555, Instagram and TikTok at Anthony Balester. Make sure if you're watching this, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The more subscribers we have, the more content we can bring you guys. And again, it helps with the algorithm, so make sure to like this video and share it with other people, because the more people you share it with, the more subscribers that we can build. That does it. Make sure you tune in each week. We do an NFL show on Wednesdays. We do a college football show on Tuesdays, and we're going to be doing that every week throughout the season. We'll be back next week to break down all the big news that happens. Maybe there'll be more coaching fires. Seems to be the trend. We'll also be breaking down all the big games and all the big things that happen this week, while also previewing all the big matchups that's going to be in the weeks ahead. We're starting to get closer to midseason, and we know the closer we get to midseason, the better the games that we get. So the better that this show is going to get. You're definitely not going to want to miss it. That's going to do it for our show. Enjoy the college football this weekend. We'll catch you guys next week.